Indie Author Lab from the Alliance of Independent Authors is a brand new in-person event for indie authors during London Book Fair Week. Taking place in London on March 11, 2026, it's a full day of mentoring, workshops, and community connection. Created for indie authors by indie authors. Learn more and secure your tickets at selfpublishingadvice.org/indieauthorlab. I'm Howard Lovey of the Alliance of Independent Authors and book editor at howardlovey.com, and you're listening to Inspirational Indie Authors. Every episode, I interview an ally member to find out what inspires them and how they are an inspiration to other authors. My guest this episode is Jacqx Melilli. She's an Australian author, playwright, and writing coach. Her work grows out of a long connection to performance and storytelling. Her novel, When the Glitter Fades, explores Australian entertainment history through fiction. That same interest led her to create memoir-writing workshops. I'll let Jacqx Melilli tell her story.
Hi, my name's Jacqx Melilli. I'm an author, playwright, and a writing coach. So I started off in film, actually. I wanted to be an actress a very long time ago, but writing was really my gift. So I've been writing. I started a writing business in 2002 and sort of been helping other people write their stories. So my background really is I have this passion for the entertainment industry, but my gifting really is writing, not acting.
Right. I discovered the same thing when I was in college. I spent one semester as a theater major and discovered that I'd rather be a starving writer than a starving actor. So, yeah. Well, let's start at the beginning for you.
Industry, isn't it? They're brutal industry. Both of them really are. They're a brutal industry, acting is, but writing easy either.
So tell me, where did you grow up and was reading and writing always part of your life?
Well, I was actually born in France and I have a French father, Spanish mother. So we migrated to Australia when I was almost 5, which was very fortunate for me because you start kindergarten when you're 5, so you learn to read and write at school. So I was very lucky that, that happened at the perfect age for me. My brother was a little bit older, so it wasn't as easy for him. But I always spoke French to my father, Spanish to my mother, so I kept those languages my whole life. And I discovered once I learned English at school, I discovered that that's how I could express myself through stories. So technically I could say that the only thing I was good at school was writing stories. So I can say I've been writing forever, really. That's my main way of communicating. Even when I was 11, I think I started a journal. It was called a diary back then, and they grew to big A4 books where I would just write to express how I was feeling. And I think that probably why now I'm so passionate about helping other people write their stories, because that's true stories is what I love. That's my passion. So helping people write their stories, because I understand how important it is to tell your story as a way of expressing who you are and just getting through tough times in life is just, writing and making sense of the world, really. Yeah,
so early on, you were pulled in by writing necessarily, but performing. Was that something that you were interested in as a child?
Yes, I was. I grew up watching all the old black and white movies, Ginger Rogers, Fred Astaire, all those, amazing movies. And I just did have a passion for acting, but I had a very, very strict father, and he would never allow me to do dance lessons. I used to really do tap dancing lessons. And he just wouldn't. He was very, very strict because too much showing of the legs and all that sort of thing. So I wasn't able to pursue acting until I was in my early 20s when I was an adult, could do like. So I did get an agent when I lived in Sydney and started working in television, it was really small roles, because I found out that it is a bit of the devil's playground there, and I wasn't prepared to compromise it or sell my soul for, climbing up that ladder of success in the acting industry.
Right,
So
right.
it was,
So you
well,
did TV shows or theater or a little bit of both?
yes,
Um,
yes, a bit of both. So there wasn't a lot of big feature films in Australia. Australian film industry is quite small, but there would be some American films that came out, and I'd just get extra roles. But I just loved it. I didn't care what sort of role it was. I just really enjoyed the industry. I love the industry. Tried to write scripts for a while to break in that area, but it's really, really tough.
mhm.
But I got a really good taste. So I did theatre, I did TV shows, I did corporate videos. So I did that for quite a few years. And then
Now, what do you mean? What did you mean by sell your soul? Was it just too phony for you, or was there a specific incident?
I just think that women were really pushed into the nude scenes and the sex scenes, and that I wasn't comfortable with that. And I think it was just, you'd go to auditions and they'd have a form and they'd sign, will you do nude, semi-nude, all these sorts of things. And I just thought, I don't want to do anything that I'm going to be ashamed of for my children to see when I'm older. So probably a bit of a prude in that way, but that's just how I just didn't think that my body was for sale for a director to say, do this and do that for the sake of selling a movie. And I think women are targeted that way. And I think that all reflects back on my writing of how women are sort of, how would you say it? They're paraded around as sexual objects, I suppose.
Commodified is maybe that's the word.
Yes.
So you decided to focus on the writing part of it, and you taught drama and you taught playwriting and script writing.
Yes, well, I taught not so much play. I did do a few schools. I would teach at schools, so I did have schools that wanted to learn how to write. Their staff wanted to write stage plays, but mostly what I was teaching in the workshops I do now is memoir writing, creative writing. They're my two main workshops that I teach. And so I did teach drama for a while when I left Sydney and my children were younger, so I taught drama, and that was really fantastic because then I got to write my own plays. I found that there wasn't a lot of Australian plays around. So this was 20 or odd years ago. There was a lot of American plays, and I wanted to really get the essence of Australia, just have a bit more Australian plays out there. So I just wrote plays for my students. Then we put them on at one-act theatre festivals, Stedfords, and we won awards. It was really exciting. It was a really fantastic time in my life. And I was very encouraged to publish those plays. So I did that. And that kind of led to an educational publisher commissioning me to write 4 books based on the plays for teachers about filmmaking and theatre production. So I wrote the Lights, Camera, Action series that were very basic introductory for teachers to know how to put on, because I would teach my students the difference between working on stage and working in front of the camera. So I took 2 of the plays that I'd wrote that won awards, and then we made 2 little short films, and the students just loved it, but they're saying, hang on, why are we starting here in this outdoor scene for, and why are we starting at the beginning? So we just taught them, explain to them it doesn't work the same for film. And so it was a fantastic learning experience, but it was a lot of fun. Then we put those 2 little short films on at the local cinema, and it was packed out. It was fantastic, just excellent. All these things, you need to be proactive when you're creative and just make these things. And they're just fantastic memories that boosted the children, my students that I taught drama with. Their whole lives changed. Parents would say to me, my child was so shy and now he's just blossomed, and it was such a positive impact. And, that brings me joy when you can bring joy to others.
Yeah.
It brings me joy.
Is there any style that's particularly Australian about what you were doing? Is there something that kind of sets it apart from say Hollywood?
Well, what I did is I wanted to bring in the Australian bush. So I just really wanted to make it Australian as far as bring in the Australian bush and the animals. So I wrote, I thought, okay, what can I do that's just simple? I had to do this very quickly. So I just chose 2 fairy tales. It was Little Red Riding Hood, and I made it Little Red Riding Hood meets the dingo. It was all about internet chat rooms and how, this dingo lures Little Red to, go and meet up with him because he really wanted to kidnap his grandma, who was worth a lot of money. And so I turned it so it was kind of the bush. I sort of brought in dingoes and Australian animals into it. And then I did Goldie Socks and the Three Koalas. And Goldie Socks is obviously Goldilocks, but it was Goldie Socks because she wanted to play soccer and her parents wanted her to be famous and do all theatre because Goldilocks, her mother, was actually famous. So I know everything ties back again to this fame. It's funny. It's funny when people say write what you know, and that's what seems to come out. But with the Goldie Socks, then I had the three koalas instead of the three bears. And that's the sort of way I brought in a little bit of Australian into the writing. And then I wrote Foreigners for Australia, which is about an upper crust English couple that flew out into the outback and were just horrified at the conditions out there. And so that was just a funny bit of, working with language a bit. Shazza and Bazza, which is Sharon and Barry, how they talked really Australian. So that's how I put those flavours in. And
I've always wanted to visit Australia, but it's those strange, deadly animals that we see pictures of them. And my wife says, no, you could just go alone.
Well, yes, we do have those. But, I just recently, only about a week ago, I was bitten by an ant. An ant! And my foot blew up and it was So not only have we got snakes and spiders and all these sorts of things, but we have deadly ants. They were quite.
An ant isn't just an ant. So then you wrote a book called When the Glitter Fades. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Okay, so that's again the Australian, trying to preserve Australian entertainment history. So when I was teaching drama, we had all groups that entered competitions in the theatre festivals. And Shirley Barnett is her married name, but her maiden name was Shirley Broadway. And she was kind of in her 70s, I think, when I met her. And she was telling me how she was a child performer during the Great Depression. They were vaudeville performers that toured Victoria. And I was fascinated because, as I mentioned to you before, I loved watching the old black and white movies and Bojangles, Shirley Temple. So I was quite fascinated by her story. And she actually, when Australian TV first started in late 1950s, she started working in television. She'd just been married then and worked in television and worked with Bert Newton and Graham Kennedy. So I just thought, wow, I really want to tell her story. So I started to research, first of all, because I really didn't know anything about Australian entertainment history. But her parents they started off in the 1920s. So I thought, well, I really have to go back to where it all started with her parents. So I researched, and this was getting really difficult because she couldn't remember a lot of things when she was young, when she started performing. So what I decided to do was turn it into a fictional story. Because I thought, how am I going to make this story engaging but still preserve Australian entertainment history? I wanted to preserve the skits. So I was trying to get her to remember some of the skits that they used to do. And so in the end, the only way I could really successfully do it was to just create a fictional story, recreate some of the skits in there that weren't really accurate to the time, but they would just, gave a bit of a flavour of what they performed, and then turned it into a bit of a generational saga revenge story. So it starts in the 1920s with her parents and then ends with just before Australian TV started. And it gives you a really good taste of Australia and how they toured in the outback, how during the Depression they would have to barter for food and petrol and all the rest in exchange for tickets. And then to add on top of that, there was this revenge story where the two male characters were fighting over the same woman, and the one that lost out wanted to destroy the other's business and get that woman, get the woman back. So it just turned into a bit of a saga. There was a lot of fun to write. And then I brought in all the things that were dear to my heart that I was explaining to you before, which was the sexual abuse of women, because there was, there's this involvement of the Melbourne Underground. One of the characters married someone who was, connections to the Melbourne Underground gangs. And so, it turned a little bit. There's some dark bits in there as well where some of the characters, all kind of true. So the characters are fictional because I changed them all, but all the characters are based on either people that I've interviewed over the years or have had connections with. So they're true stories in a sense.
So it's based on real research. It's not just, wholly invented. That sounds fascinating. It sounds like a little bit of everything, history, drama, some serious issues too. So that research eventually led you to start running a memoir writing workshop, right?
Yes, it did, because I thought it was so hard to find information. People just didn't write things or memoirs back in the days. I'm talking 1920s and that. So that's why I had to turn it into a fictional, because it was so difficult to find information about what life was like back then. And I thought, I'm going to try and encourage people to write their memoirs, write their stories down, because especially as they're getting older, and that's mostly the time they have to write. But as they get older, these stories are going to be forgotten forever. And what was life like back then? It was really difficult to research. So I thought, I'm going to see if people, if this is going to work with a workshop. And it has people, really wanting to write their memoirs, but they had no idea where to start or how to form it into an engaging story. So I love doing that. And I find that a lot of people are really, really keen to write their stories, because it's them expressing themselves and saying, hey, this is what happened to me and I want to share it to help others. And I just think it's a beautiful, I love memoirs. I read a lot of people's stories for that reason, that true stories are amazing. And to be honest, every fictional story is based on true stories that people have related to and turned into a fictional story, but it's that essence there is true to event.
Yeah, well, sometimes you can tell deeper truths through fiction too.
Yeah.
So, so stepping back a little bit, I don't know what the publishing scene is like in Australia. I mean, we're the Alliance of Independent Authors, so is there a thriving indie publishing scene?
There is actually, because I think it's so difficult for people to be published, traditionally published. I think there's a lot is the flavour. What's the flavour? This is what's happening in the world now, so this is what publishers are looking for. So that limits people with their stories. So they've begun to self-publish because they want to tell their story, not what traditional publishers are looking at, what they think is going to sell. So I think that has really boomed. It's really boomed. But also I like, just the community that we have with independent publishers, because they want the standard of their books to be really as good as, if not better than, traditionally published books. And that's really fantastic to see, because you really do. I mean, books are hard to sell, so you really do need to make your book the very best it can be. Right. And I think what I really like about the independent publishing group, or ALLE, as we're a member of, because it helps. We're all a community, and it helps us get, that high standard, but also know how to market the book. So yeah, I think it's doing. I think it has boomed. I think it's doing well. But Australia, unfortunately, we have a very small population. So again, it's probably, I don't know what it's like in the US as far as indie publishers in the US, but it's a small market. So I'm going to be translating my book into French, Spanish, and Dutch, because I'll start with those, because I can at least read it to see, is that an accurate sort of portrayal of my story. I'll start with those and see how I go, because I do need to expand into, I'd love to expand into America, but then with American writing, like my book is written with Australian English, which has, instead of you have double quotation marks for dialogue, or we have single ones. And so Americans look at my writing and think, oh, so many mistakes in this, Yeah.
I'm also an editor, and that would drive me nuts. But
maybe I need you to turn my book in to make an an American version of my book. Americans read Australian books and think, oh, there's so many mistakes. It's all the spelling's wrong and this is wrong. Do they think like that, or are they open to the fact that
I think if there's an Australian flavor, where you do Australian spellings, but the standard for a U.S. audience is U.S. spellings. So it all depends on what it is you're trying to accomplish. Is it an Australia specific story, or can it be universal? And what kind of voice, do you want? You mentioned that the scene is kind of, just because of the population is kind of small. Is it necessary to be successful to market outside of Australia?
Oh, I'm not sure. That's a good question. Maybe I should ask you that.
Well, I'm not the marketing expert, but yeah, I mean, do you find that you primarily have an Australian audience?
We do have an Australian audience. As I said, it is small, and you have to constantly be pushing out there to get seen, unless you're already a well-established Australian author, which I'm not. You do need to and that's where the workshops come in really handy, because I do the workshops, so they're booked through the libraries, and then the libraries get to know you and they purchase a copy of your book, and you've just got to keep spreading. The mistake I probably made is that when I started publishing over 20 years ago, then I had a big gap because I was helping others publish and I was doing other editing and writing and other things like that. So I didn't publish more books. So I think if you're a writer, you need to continue to publish your own books, even though they still, they're still there and they're, still getting small royalties and all the rest of it. I think it's a career, it's a business, so you need to keep publishing. So that's what I'm doing now, is just rebuilding. I'm going to republish some of the older books I have, write new ones. I've got a few things that I'm writing at the moment. So it is a business, so you need to keep your face out there for people to know you. So it's a constant,
right?
Yeah, it's a constant marketing thing and just getting out there. I think it's like musicians or actors or anything. You've got to be out there touring, and you've got to be out there for people to get to know you and build that side of your business up again.
Yeah. I have the same kind of issue where I write, but it's not how I make my living. I make my living as an editor, working on other people's work. So I'm not physically out there. So that's always a kind of push and pull for me.
Yeah, it's difficult. But I love doing the workshops. I really enjoy that. And then people buy my books from getting to know you. As I said, it's a constant marketing. Get yourself out there. They get to know you. They like who you are. They like how you present, and they'll buy your book. And then, getting reviews I find is really hard too, because you always ask, can you write a review? Oh, yeah, I will. And then they just time poor. And I don't like paying for reviews. I think that's got to come organically from people that read it and wanted to write a review. But that's really difficult. I don't know what you think about that, but I find getting people to write reviews,
it's difficult. Yeah. You have to find your own niche audience and do the do the groundwork, do the legwork, even while you're writing the story. Who's going to be interested in this? Who's the audience? You've gone from performance to publishing to teaching others. So what do you hope people take away from your body of work in the long run?
Oh, I want people to feel that they can relate to what I'm writing, that I'm writing something that's significant, not just entertainment, but that has messages that inspire. Or when I wrote When the Glitter Fades, I had no intention to it was going to be light, airy, preserving Australian entertainment history, doing the skit. But as I was writing, the characters were just taking over. And they say write what you know. So I did write about the entertainment industry, but I didn't know all the historical parts. But the funny thing is that the characters deep-rooted inside you, the characters start to take over of things that you feel passionate about, child exploitation, all these things very sad things that happen in life, and they come out in my book and in my characters. So when people read it, I want them to walk away thinking, I've learned something, and maybe be inspired to, make a difference themselves.
Yeah.
I really want them to think. I don't want them just to be entertained, but to think about what's happening in the world and what their part is. We all have a purpose in life. So I suppose I just want people to really feel that they've walked away. And I do get the reviews saying, some people feedback saying, oh, I learned something, I didn't know that, or I didn't know that about Australia, or I didn't know what was going on, these things that were going on at the time. I didn't actually know what was going on at the time. I thought back in the day, this is how stupid and naive I was. I thought back in the day everything was quite innocent and fun, but I didn't realise there was a dark underbelly, and all these things that were happening were really happening. And I thought, oh, that's incredibly sad, but I have to, I have to portray this. I have to show that side. So I suppose it's, I don't want to just be entertaining. I want people to think, they've learned something, or they're moved by something I've written.
Well, it's good to hear you say that the character should tell the story. That's one of my mantras as an editor. You don't want a disembodied narrator telling you what's happening, but experience it through the eyes of your characters. And, that to me is fun to write and more fun to read.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jacqx. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. I know it's evening over here in Michigan, and you're just getting up the next day in the morning in Australia. So I should say have a wonderful day.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. And yes, thank you. You do a wonderful job. I really enjoy listening to your podcast. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to Inspirational Indie Authors. I'm Howard Lovey, Content and Communications Manager at the Alliance of Independent Authors and book editor at howardlovey.com. If you are a member of ALLI and would like to be considered for the show, please write to me at howard@allianceindependentauthors.org and tell me what inspires you and how you can inspire other authors. As always, find more author advice, tips, and tools at our Self-Publishing Advice Center, selfpublishingadvice.org. And if you haven't already, we invite you to join our organization and become a self-publishing ally. You can do that at allianceindependentauthors.org.